Okay, so my presentation is on overfishing in the Pacific Ocean. Now, the Pacific Ocean is a very large set of ecosystems. It's quite large, so I will be honing in my case study on a couple of examples later on that have very sustainable fishing practices and they've been proven successful. But anyway, so first, let's just dive right in, pun intended. What is overfishing? Overfishing is exactly what it sounds like. It's fishing way too much. What does that mean, though? It's harvesting a species of fish in such high quantities and so quickly that they are not able to reproduce at a rate to sustain their populations. Now, this is a trend that has been increasing over time, and very recently, actually, it's seen a decline, which is very reassuring, but there's still quite a few populations that are currently being overfished, so it's still worth paying some attention to. Now, each species has a maximum sustainable yield. Now, this refers to the maximum number of fish that should be harvested in order for their species to be able to reproduce so that the populations do not decrease. This number is different depending on every species. They all have their own population, their own supply and demand. You'll notice a lot of parallels with economics when it comes to overfishing, and that's because this is largely, while it's a biological problem, the causes are largely economic. And then there's an important distinction to make between overfishing and overfished. So, to say that a species is overfished is to say that their population is below the level that would maximize the harvest. So, when a species is overfished, this isn't necessarily saying that the population of this species is declining or not. It simply indicates that the population is below a target level that would maximize the harvest. So if the population is decreasing, that is when we would use the term overfishing. So as you can see, that this is a very important distinction to take note of, especially when you're looking at the data and the status of different fish stocks, and something I had to learn pretty early on to make sure that I got my facts right. But moving on, so why is overfishing happening? There's two main reasons, and those are being money and negligence. So at the forefront of it all, it's money. So for fishermen and fisheries, every single fish that a fishery catches is an increase in profit. So of course, the people who are driven solely by their monetary gain, they'll harvest species and deteriorate the populations for their own benefit. And tied in with that is also negligence, where some people just aren't aware of the scope of the problem, or they simply just don't believe it's a problem at all. With these two things at hand, it's not hard to see how things have gotten out of hand. These reasons also explain that the most susceptible fish species in bodies of water are along places where fish is a daily part of the diet. For example, the Mediterranean Sea is the most overfished body of water in the world, with 75% of the stocks there being overfished. And this is because a lot more people want the fish, so it's worth a lot more money for fisheries to keep, harvesting the fish. So why does this matter? Well, one, because people eat fish. It's a protein that many people have access to, as it is easy to find, and it is, I don't want to say easy to catch, but it's one that doesn't take a lot of farming or pre-agricultural experience. But we have to think beyond just people when it comes to overfishing, because just overfishing one species affects the entire ecosystem in the ocean. So I have this example here, so let me just draw it out for you here. So assume that this fish is the one that is being overfished. We'll call it fish A. Then this longer one is fish B. So fish B is a natural predator of fish A, and so it eats fish A for its daily nutrients. Now, if we get rid of fish A, if fish A goes extinct as a result of overfishing, then fish B is left with having to find something else to supplement for those nutrients. So fish B either has the choice to adapt or it will also go extinct. So it has the potential to start a domino effect of aquatic mass extinction. But it's not even just that. So back to fish A. So fish A, when it excretes, this excretion, the feces of the fish, actually has nutrients that go to algae and other plants at the seafloor. So these plants, they absorb the nutrients from the fish excrement, and then different critters at the bottom of the sea, so assume this grub, he'll gnaw at the algae and he will get nutrients from this algae. And then we have, slightly bigger organisms like crabs. They'll eat that, and it's a food web, because then you have another organism that will eat the crab, and so getting rid of just that fish, then there's no nutrients in the algae, and the grubs also can't get their nutrients, and it just disrupts the entire productivity of the ocean. So even just getting rid of one fish species, it causes such a major disruption in the productivity of the ecosystems. So it's very important to address this. So now that we understand what overfishing is and why it's happening, what are some possible solutions? Well, all these solutions relate to one main idea, and that is we just have to fish less. But that's easier said than done. So, what are some specific sustainable fishing practices that we can utilize? Well, I'll tell you more about some in the next couple slides with some specific examples. But some other options that we should consider is educating different people around the world, specifically fisheries, of the problem at hand and the severity of it, because this will tie into the negligence portion of the causes. Just bringing awareness to the issue, it could have really good effects. But then also enforcement. Right now, there's some regulation on the different kinds of harvest numbers you can bring in, but I think that we should really universalize it. So make it so all fisheries have to comply, and we enforce those policies. And if they violate those policies, then they face hard consequences, such as the revoking of their licenses, shutting down their fisheries. It might seem a little harsh, but I do believe that these are the course of actions that we have to take. So one example of a place that uses sustainable fishing practices is in New Zealand. There's fisheries that fish for hoki, which is a fish in the Pacific. And one thing that they utilize is the quota management system. So for hoki, the total annual catch permitted in New Zealand's water is less than 10% of the adult population of the fish. Furthermore, they also have a total allowable commercial catch, and that is in weight. So that's also actually decreased over the years. At one point, it was 150,000, but then it went down to 130,000, and right now it's down to 115,000 tons. So, as you can see, just regulations to limit the amount of fish that you can catch, and it's proven to have some really good effects. Furthermore, another thing that they're doing in New Zealand is while working towards reducing the catch, they're also working with different biologists to just gain more biological data on the species, because then they can better aim their efforts to preserving it in a manner that just benefits their stock structure and all that, and takes all that into consideration. So we could implement some of these strategies in different parts of the world where there are some fish that are currently being overfished or currently facing overfishing. So Yeah. So another example of a sustainable fishing practice that is used around the world is up in Alaska at a fishery for Bristol Bay salmon. They utilize what is called escapement gulls. And so an escapement gull is essentially a number of your harvest that you release back into the ocean. So the way that they do it in Bristol Bay is that they aim to release 1/5 of the season's total harvest. So in 2023, they forecasted around 50.3 million total. So their harvest was 36.9 million, and their escapement was at 13.3 million. And so, as you can see with these massive numbers, it does give a lot of leeway to get the fish back in the ocean to repopulate and have a sustainable population, but also keeps fisheries open and thriving and gives them a lot of potential for profit. So I do think that escapement gulls, they could be a really good avenue to venture for a lot of fisheries. And I think combining this with things like the total commercial catch allowance, and maybe rather than simply escapement goals where it's an opt-in, opt-out sort of thing, make it just escapement numbers that all fisheries have to comply by. And, they have to abide by the rules. Otherwise, they face the consequences, as I mentioned in the enforcement section. Now, these are just ideas I'm spitballing, but, in Bristol Bay, escapement goals have worked really well. Bristol Bay salmon, they're no longer in danger of facing overfishing. But yeah, so I think more fishers around the world should use Bristol Bay salmon and New Zealand hoki as models for their systems. So this brings us to now. As I said earlier in my introduction, overfishing has actually had a trend of slowing down over the last couple years, it's really reassuring. But there are still some stocks that are still overfished, and some that are still that are in the process of that are facing overfishing. There we go. But yeah, so the last two examples of the New Zealand hoki and the Bristol Bay salmon, it's shown me that progress is possible. It just takes some action. And so I go back to my educate and enforce model that I proposed. And I do think that both escapement goals and also the total commercial catch allowance, those are really good ideas. And I think that they should be implemented in fisheries worldwide. Overfishing, it might not be as jarring or as intimidating of a problem as climate change, and you might not feel pressure to take it on right away. You might put it in the back pocket, but if we keep on just pushing it to the side, then there's going to be some bad repercussions, and we've already done so much damage to the ocean. I really don't think that we can afford to keep on neglecting it any further. So thank you.